Well, it appears we're on, but as always, before we go on, we must do. Well, hello there, everyone. It is that time again for a Nothing Cast. Sitting beside me is the ever lovely wife of mine, the dominatrix editor, the night editor.
He says that because I had to bring the pain earlier.
And that's why I love you. No, seriously, I was falling off track. I was spiraling into depression and wasting my time with stupid, meaningless shit, which I think the audience knows about. And my night editor came in with the corset and the 5-inch latex heels and the whip and said, "You will write, you will write, motherfucker. You will complete your projects."
Yes, you will.
It doesn't matter that life is hard and you're deeply depressed and your family sucks ass. You will write. You will not let them win, or I will make you lose.
Are you saying that I'm like Conan standing behind you saying you will write, damn you?
Yeah, but hotter.
Hotter.
Yeah, actually, yeah, just hotter.
Well, better Conan than being the Thoth baboon that sits there threatening you.
No baboons. Simians kind of disturb me.
I agree, especially baboons.
So, hello, welcome to the Nothing Cast. It is a Friday Nothing Cast to make up for the fact that there will be no ladies' night tonight. And welcome, you are on the air, and we're taking questions about spiritualism. That's right, spiritualism, because we have a spiritual expert in the studio tonight. That's right, Kat Rocha. He's a amateur spiritologist, metaphysician.
I don't know. Well, okay, yeah, I can say that I'm amateur.
Amateur metaphysician.
Yes, I am an amateur metaphysician.
Which means that they don't believe you're dead when you die.
Take 2 ectoplasms and call me in the morning.
And so we've been getting those questions. So, audience, what do you have to ask tonight to our expert?
I wish you had prepared me for this. I would have brought it in my books. Oh, well. Wolf, want to know how disturbing a baboon is? They raise dead children.
Well, that's different.
That is different. I am curious what you were referencing. Anyway, let's see.
So tell me, what is your most favorite case regarding spiritualism?
Oh, Jesus. Now, see, that's kind of hard to quantify.
That's what she said.
No, because there's different cases that all have different elements of them that I really like and I get something out of. I mean, of course, I've mentioned it a couple of times this week. I forget what the name of the quote unquote entity was, but it's the mongoose that was possessed by a demon that lived in the walls of this guy's house if it wasn't Northern England, it was in Ireland, and it would cuss the living shit out of anybody who came in.
So a cussing mongoose.
Yeah, well, it's a demon. It's a demon-possessed mongoose that lived in his walls.
And how did they quantify this?
How did they quantify it? Because he said that, because the guy who owned the house said it was there.
That was enough, was it?
Supposedly he did have a pet mongoose, but
Did anyone actually see the mongoose kind of look up and say, "Hey, fuckface"?
no, you always heard the voice from the walls.
As if somebody might be behind the wall.
No, it wasn't that.
No, it wasn't. Was he throwing his voice?
Yeah, it was ventriloquism.
So he's like, Father O'Reilly, come in here. You've got to see my mongoose. It's too bad to possessed. Father O'Reilly is a fucking whoremeister.
Yeah.
This is a very disturbed mongoose.
It's a very disturbed mongoose.
It needs exercising.
Yes, it does. They couldn't, after 20 years or so, it just left.
How long do those damn things last?
No, the entity just left.
Oh, the mongoose.
No, I don't know what happened to the mongoose. I just know the entity just left. I believe at the same time the guy died.
Oh, that's a coincidence.
Yeah. It just left.
So what's another interesting case of spiritualism, ghosts, supernatural, from the Golden Age of Spiritualism?
Well, you have...
And what is the Golden Age of Spiritualism?
Well, the Golden Age of Spiritualism, I would say, was between... now others are probably going to disagree with me, and that's perfectly fine. But from my limited research and knowledge, it is from about the 1870s, 1880s, into up until the beginning of World War II was the Golden Age, or the heyday, as it were, because during that time period you had the great influenza epidemic, and you had the tail end or the end of the American Civil War, and you had World War I. So you had a lot of mass death all at once, and the people were searching for some answers, something to, for some condolence, something to make them know that their loved ones weren't just gone forever, that they would maybe one day meet them again. And so spiritualism as we know it began in 1946.
Really?
Yes. I mean, not 1846. I apologize. Wrong name. In 1846 with the Fox sisters. There were spiritualists before them, but the Fox sisters brought it to the forefront. And then it's basically slowly became more and more popular moving forward. And as many people know, Mary Todd Lincoln was heavily into spiritualism, even bringing mediums to the White House and having several seances that Lincoln himself attended. Now, whether he himself believed or he was attending to, be polite to his wife, I honestly don't know.
Well,
there's too many accounts that say one way or another. We're never going to know.
Well, as Razorfist has informed us, Lincoln was not quite the level-headed, kindly gentleman we're all told. He was actually a piece of shit.
Yeah.
But anyway, getting back to the Fox sisters, why are these two famous?
Okay, the Fox sisters are famous because, again, I believe it was 1846. There was an account where in their home, they started hearing these knocking sounds, and it was heard all throughout the house. And they swore that it was some entity that was there. And then later they developed a rapport where they would say, knock once for yes, two for no. And the entity would respond to questions. Then they figured out basically their own version of Morse code to indicate different letters of the alphabet, and the entity would communicate in those forms. And through this, they determined that it was the spirit of a peddler. I've heard sometimes it was a soldier. I've also know that they weren't entirely consistent sometimes with their stories. But basically, he had come to the house at some point before the family moved in and had been murdered and been buried in the basement. And they went on tour. Basically, yeah, I'm truncating their history. There's different points in here that I'm missing, and that's just because brevity will make it more interesting. But basically, they went on tour with this entity because this entity followed them, and would do seances where they would have the entity answer questions, things that supposedly nobody would know but the person who was asking the question. And the truth is that they could dislocate their joints, so they were popping the joints in their knees and in their ankles to answer these questions and to make these knocking sounds.
Really?
Yeah.
And where did this lead to for them?
Well, ultimately, it led to both of them becoming absolute drunkards and being buried in a potter's field in the 1890s.
So they were really into drinking the spirits as well as communicating to them.
Later in life, yes, they also liked. They were popular with the gentlemen.
Well,
not so gentlemen.
I get it. I mean, they got a bit slender of the bodies, but they're pretty. They're definitely very pretty. I mean, the one I don't get is the Witch of Lime Street. Everyone kept saying she was a hottie. Shall we move on?
You want me to
the
talk
Witch
about
of Lime Street does not look like a looker by any means.
Well, before you get to the Witch of Lime Street, now, there's you've got the Fox sisters there, and they were in the state of New York. So they were actually, spiritualism as we know it actually began in the United States, not in England or in Europe. You would think it would begin there, but no, we're the ones who pioneered it. Yay, America. After the Fox sisters in the 1860s, I believe it was, is the Davenport Brothers. And they are significant because at this time period in history, spiritualism and magic, were developing side by side. In fact, they were employing a lot of the same techniques and doing a lot of the same tricks. The only difference is you go to a magician knowing he's lying to you. The fun is figuring out how he's doing it. Where you go to a spiritualist and you don't think they're lying to you. The Davenport Brothers are where we get spirit cabinets from, where they would say, like, okay, I'm going to go into this box and I'm going to close this curtain. And, so, you can all see there is nothing in the box before I get in there. And then they close the curtain and then, spirit sounds come and you get sounds of they pioneered the spirit trumpets or using tambourines or other things. Other spiritualists had been using them before, but they were the ones to really popularize using musical instruments to indicate that a spirit is present, because nobody could be blowing into the trumpet.
So wait, the spirits would enter the world from behind a curtain and play Mr. Tambourine Man.
Yes.
All right.
And we're all familiar with spirit cabinets now because magicians use them. Even to this day, magicians still use the cabinet. It's just, it started off as a way for spiritualists to show that they were really communing with the spirits. And, and the idea behind the cabinet was, for a seance, you need absolute darkness. Of course you do. But if you're going to be doing this in front of an audience on a stage, you can't black out the audience. I mean, that's not what they're there for. They're there to see something, but the medium needs, quote unquote, complete darkness to commune with the spirit. So you build the cabinet, so now they can be curtained off and in, quote, total darkness.
So Trust me. There's nothing funny going on behind the curtain.
Exactly.
And people fell for this.
Yeah, in droves. In absolute droves. So, but I wanted to bring up the Davenport Brothers because a lot of the tricks that they used when they performed their act in public, stage magicians to this day still use.
Really?
Yeah. And so it's very important then, so that when we get to the Witch of Lime Street, that you have a bit of that information, because it's by the time you get to the 1920s.
Okay, so wait, it was these two guys.
Yeah.
On the far left and the twins.
Yeah, the twins.
Okay, the Davenport brothers were twins, and they were the ones that started the whole thing about the box and the curtains.
They're in one right now.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. The thing that looks like a locker.
Yeah.
Or a wardrobe on wheels.
The two doors would close on either side, and then you'd have this space, and then things would float in the space in between.
JC's got a question.
Yeah. That one movie you mentioned, Nightmare Alley, was about a guy who ran a grift like this. That is absolutely correct. I haven't seen the Del Toro version,
but the original's great.
Yeah, the original is great, but the original film does not have what's in the book, and I'm curious if Del Toro's movie does, because in the book he purchases a house. Oh, I take that back. He didn't purchase a house. He got in with an elderly woman who was convinced that he had communion with the spirits, who willed to him her house when she died. And it's amazing how the ink was barely dry on that will, and she popped off and went into the great beyond. And he turned the entire house into one gigantic, basically the haunted house in the Haunted Mansion in Disneyland, where every room something was happening. In this room he had a phonograph hooked up so to make noises. In this room he had spirit trumpets. In this room he had tables knocking, and
I wish I had enough money to have a house big enough, or just to have a separate house where every room was like rigged with motion sensors to do shit like that.
Yeah, well, this was all using pulleys and things, because it was the 30s.
Oh, was it the 30s by then?
Well, Nightmare Alley takes place in the 30s.
Okay.
But yeah, that's exactly what he was doing, was employing those tricks. And if you've ever either read the book and or seen the movie The Prestige covers this too, where there's this fine line between magician's tricks and actual and spiritualism, communing with the dead, crossing that veil.
I mean, could you imagine having your own haunted house rigged up so, like, when the guests come in and they're in the bathroom and they tug on the toilet paper, you hear like this ghostly voice and the light flickers, "Your butt napkins, my lord."
That would be pretty cool. Although I do know how to make the changing paintings.
Really?
Yeah, I've seen a tutorial. I know how to do it. I just got to get off my butt and do it.
You could have, like, in the bathroom after the person uses it, the lights flicker and suddenly all the paintings look like they've got this look like, oh God, what's that smell?
Yeah, exactly. I can totally do that.
Okay, shall we move on to the Witch of Lime Street, or where do you want to go next?
Yeah, we can go to the Witch of Lime Street. Okay, so the Witch of Lime Street is in the 20s. Now,
there's a better picture.
There you go.
Yeah, supposedly they said she was hot. I don't buy anyone thought she was hot. I get people wanting to get with these two, but no, I don't see why anyone wanted to see this lady dance around naked.
Marjorie Crandon, because she had money.
Okay.
No, I'm not kidding, because she had money. She had a lot of money. spirit photography. I can talk about that too if we wanted. Anyway, okay, so in the teens, 19 something teens or so,
You want me to pull up notes?
Scientific American did a contest, because they're like, okay, we are scientists. We are going to explore the science of this new phenomenon that people are experiencing, this phenomenon of spirits supposedly coming to this world and moving furniture and blowing instruments and telling information that they shouldn't know. We are scientists. We're going to look into this. And they offered $10,000. 10,000? 5,000.
It was a lot of money back then.
I think it was $10,000 in that money.
A lot of money right now, but
yeah, I could be wrong, but I think it was 10,000. For anybody who could, prove the existence of the spirit world, and prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that they truly did have some connection to the great beyond, to what was on the other side of the veil. And they had their own investigators. They had volunteers from the Institute of Psychical Research. And even Conan Doyle was not formally part of the investigation, but he did lend his services occasionally. But he actually didn't partake too much in this. But Houdini was a huge part of, Houdini on his own would go to mediums and sit in and show exactly how the medium was doing it every single time. And we can get into Houdini later, but basically he did have an axe to grind. And so when, they've been doing this contest for years upon years, they finally come across Marjorie Crandon, who is I forget who her husband was, but basically they were rich, and they could not figure out how she was doing it. She was making the tables move. She was making like phonographs that were supposedly broken work again. She was making trumpets blow that were from across the room. Her thing was supposedly the spirit of her dead brother was the one who she was channeling, and was really the one who was doing this. And you would hear him talk. In fact, he was apparently a great jokester and loved just basically lampooning everybody that was in the room, and knew things about people that were in the room that he shouldn't know. And that was the other part of her routine, was that it was a man's voice that was coming out. And they're like, this is too deep to be her throwing her voice. This has to be, this really does have to be a spirit. And Houdini, they went for like a year and a half doing sittings, trying everything that they possibly could to trip her up. And Houdini tripped her up in 3, possibly 4 sittings. And then he goes, I'm done. And he says, no, she's a fake. I'm done. And immediately set about on his tours around the country and around Europe, doing his routine based on this is how she's really doing it, and him doing what he believed she was doing as part of his routine.
Now, didn't this piss off Scientific American?
It pissed off some of the people in Scientific American. And the reason why is because they didn't want him involved. The more they did these tests, they're more like, oh my God, she might be the one. She might be the one. And they're like, we don't want Harry on this, because Harry is going to rip this to shreds, and we don't want that. We don't want Harry as part of this investigation.
Because science is non-biased.
Exactly. And finally, after over a year, they're like, look, we have to declare her either a winner or we have to declare her a fraud. And we can't do this without Harry's vote. We can't do it without him. So he got in there. He knew within the first session how she was doing it, but he knew he had to prove it to his peers that it was her that was doing it. And so he did two more sessions. No, I'm sorry. He did one more session with her regular. And then he said, okay, let me put you in a spirit cabinet. And she says, well, I can't. That's something that you guys have outlawed. He goes, no. This is going to be one of my own devising. And if you find a picture of that cabinet, it looks like one of Dr. Kellogg's sauna booths from his sanitarium, which was a very popular spot at the time as well. And where it was just her head and her hands sticking out of this wooden box. And the voice would throw, you still heard the voice, but nothing moved when she was in the box.
Interesting.
And in fact, at one point, she's kind of wiggling around, and then the voice says, Houdini put a ruler in the box. And Houdini's like, I did nothing of the sort. I've been standing right here. Everybody can see my hands. I did not put a ruler in the box. And the voice goes, well, when you open the box, there's going to be a ruler, and somebody put it in there. And like, because that's what she was using to move things around.
Oh, God. Oh, God. Okay.
Yeah.
So when did spirit boards enter into all of this?
Oh, spirit boards have been around forever. It was a parlor game that now I can't tell you when they formally came into being, but what I can share is that during the Victorian era, so again, from 1830s to 1901, so same time period, it was a popular parlor game to write on a piece of paper the letters of the alphabet and then use a champagne glass. No, I'm sorry, a cordial glass, because they're smaller, to move about the board over the letters. And nobody thought it was scary. Nobody thought that it was actually like tapping into the devil or spirits or anything. They just thought it was fun. And somewhere along the line, because the Victorians are where basically modern day consumerism comes from, and it's basically, if you can make a buck off of it, somebody will. There began this huge push to making these spirit boards. And then okay, I'm not going to get my dates right, so I'm not going to try. But basically, then it was marketed the popular Ouija board and the Parker Brothers. Yeah, it was it was another company made the Ouija board, and Parker Brothers purchased it from that company. It was a little literal mom and pop that Parker Brothers purchased, and then they basically set about monopolizing the Ouija board industry.
Where did that name come from?
Ouija?
Does anyone actually know?
Yes. There is. It's a bastardization of an actual word that I think gypsies use. Yeah, I'm not remembering it correctly. It does actually come from someplace. I just know that Ouija is not correct, and then we call it Ouija.
Squeegee?
Squeegee.
Squeegee board. How about that?
So.
Oh, it says here there were precursors all the way back to 1100 AD.
There you go.
Interesting.
Yeah, I just know a little bit about the modern day board.
And what was the crossover between radio and spiritualism?
The crossover between radio and spiritualism. Now, excuse me. I know for a fact that my knowledge has huge gaps on this, so you'll have to forgive me. But basically, what it was with radio, they kept running into situations where, oh, you're not going to be able to transmit messages through distances, and then the telegraph is invented. Well, you're not going to be able to transmit voice at all. Then you have Edison, and you have the shortwave radio, and they're like, well, you're not going to be able to transmit voice over X many distances because the earth is curved, and voice travels in a straight line. You're not going to be able to do it. And then nope, that gets solved. But these things all happened very rapidly, like all within the same 20 years or so. And so with all of this amazing innovations in sharing, mainly transmitting voice through what was scientifically called the ether. And they thought that the ether was a substantial place and potentially where the spirits lived. It then is reasonable to think, well, if I can transmit my voice from here across the Mediterranean to, if I can transmit my voice from France to Morocco, why wouldn't I be able to transmit it to the spirit realm, to somebody who might just be in the same room? They're just in a plane of existence that I can't see or reach. And so you had a lot of people claiming that they had devices or abilities that were similar to these radios, but that could talk to the dead.
Well, how many times have we seen modern films where supposedly the dead are using social media?
Well, social media, you've got Samara using the television.
Yeah.
In Ringu. So yeah, it's logical, just not actual, if that makes any sense. To think that this device that we use for communication, you can also use to communicate with those who are no longer here.
Now, Endless Nocturne says, didn't Helena Blavatsky popularize the spirit board?
No, she didn't. Because again, the Victorians were using them all over the place. It was a parlor game. It was something fun that you did, like Blind Man's Bluff. Now, if you mean it was a popular thing for professional mediums to start using, I'm sure it was. Most of my readings, actually, they don't touch spirit boards. Most of my readings, the real, the spiritualists in question, use things more like table tapping. Now, with that said, though, most of my focus has been on physical mediumship, which is illegal to practice in the United States. And physical mediumship is the use of moving objects and having things turn on and off on their own and other stuff like that, because it's too easy to show that these are fake. And nobody to this day has been able to prove that physical mediumship is real. Therefore, it is illegal as a scam.
So you mean stuff like this?
Yeah, stuff like that. Yeah, having the ectoplasm
and
come out.
explain to the audience what we're looking at here.
Okay.
Other than it being disgusting.
Supposedly, this is a picture of a woman with ectoplasm. Yes, that's stuff from Ghostbusters. Coming out of her ears, her nose, her mouth, and on top of her, apparently on top of her head. That's a new one.
It looks like wet washcloth.
It's most likely cheesecloth.
Okay.
So then there's other ones where they come out of the nether regions. And wow, it's a miracle that it's coming out from there.
And it smells a certain way.
Yeah. Then there have been ones that were what they did was they took a piece of cloth and they actually printed a face on there, so, kind of similar to like the Shroud of Turin, how that looks.
Yeah.
And they would spit that out. And so when it would unfurl, you'd see this face in there. And oftentimes what the mediums would also do is this cheesecloth that you're seeing, this quote ectoplasm, they would douse in phosphorus powder.
Oh, so it would glow.
Yeah. So, you'd have this dark room and then all of a sudden this green stuff would just start emanating from the spiritualist. And again, for the 1800s to early 1900s, if you didn't know what you were looking at, that's pretty convincing.
Okay, so Yang had an interesting question I asked him to elaborate on. We'll bring...
do you have an example of times where spiritualism has worked out well, or do they always end up like the Gnostics?
And then he's elaborated.
Gnostics end up in cults where millions die because they ultimately believe they have secret knowledge. A lot of spiritualists seem to believe similar things, but I don't know that they're the same.
Well, Blavatsky did rip off or flat out plagiarize a lot of Gnostic texts and a lot of Hermetic texts. Mm-hmm. But Kat?
I would say, are we going to see, spiritualists dying off? No, I wouldn't say that.
No, did they ever form cults that led to mass suicide?
That go to mass suicide? Not to my knowledge. I will say this though, spiritualism and communism go hand in hand.
They always have.
So take that for what you want.
Spiritualism and feminism also went hand in hand, and yes, most of the early suffragists were also spiritualists.
Early suffragists were spiritualists. Most of the practicing mediums are female. The Davenport Brothers are actually a rarity. Usually, okay. In the early days, I would say what was recorded was closer to 50-50. I'm not going to say it's exactly dead center, but it was closer to even between being the recorded female practicing spiritualist and male practicing spiritualist. There was a priest in the 1830s who would go around, and he said that he basically channeled an angel, and that angel knew things about people. So there were there were a lot more known males, but as the practice went on, you got more and more females, and it became more uneven.
Yang has more.
No, have spiritualists ever ended up with positive results, like some good to the general public?
No. They're fraudsters.
Yeah, unfortunately, no. And the ones who claim, we did do good, I mean, the only thing that I would say, and this is subjective, is for those who are in mourning, for those who have lost loved ones and are seeking some form of answers, the spiritualists did provide that. So on an individual level, I would say there was good. But with that said, they also took advantage of a lot of people and fleeced them of their money, and and formed little cults and other things like that.
A lot of it seemed to be about ego and people really enjoying attention.
A lot of it is, yeah, because you'll find, especially once we enter into the 20th century, most of the known spiritualists are women of status, where it's, it's like, well, we were just at this party, and somebody said something, and all of a sudden I started channeling this spirit, and so now I'm a medium. Isn't that wild? I'm not joking. That actually is a very common story of, women who, or they would, it's like, well, we were invited to a medium and she was doing her seance, and the spirit said that I had the gift as well. So I took it up. That happened a lot. Yeah, JPL was started by an occultist, and now we have jet propulsion engines.
Yeah, but they weren't spiritualists. They were into more Kabbalah and Hermetic magic, which is kind of a whole different beast.
Mm-hmm. How, like, after the fact, and by after the fact, I mean after Lincoln's death, there's a medium who claims that she was able to give Lincoln advice on whether or not he should actually sign the Emancipation Proclamation 2 years before he did it. And it's like, you can neither prove nor disprove that, because this particular medium did go to the White House. We have records of that. But did she actually, consult the spirits and give him advice on that particular document? Probably not. I see what you did there, different beast. I mean, if you guys like, I have an entire book on things spiritual, things spiritualists supposedly said under trance, including channeling Benjamin Franklin and a bunch of different famous people, and some of that shit's wild. It even includes excerpts from is it excerpts from, or is it the entire book that was supposedly written by Mark Twain post-mortem?
Really?
Yes. And his estate was pissed when it came out. They sued the living shit out of the woman who put it out. They're like, no, it's not written in his style. You have spelling errors that he never would have made. He's not even from the places that you're saying that he's from. Yeah, you are dead wrong. And at the end of the court battle, it came out, yes, she can publish it. She just can't say that it's actual. She can't say by Mark Twain. She has to say by so-and-so under the guidance of the spirit of Mark Twain. She can do that. So it's something you can get to this day if you wanted to.
Also, would it be fair to say that spiritualists, by and large, came from more of a folklore background, almost?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. It's definitely
old wives' tales and.
Well, at least the early days of spiritualism, like with the Fox sisters, they're knocking. Now, by the way, the Fox sisters did this originally as an April Fool's joke.
And it just went out of control.
Yeah, they were it became too big too quickly. They were just trying to scare their parents, and they hadn't bet on their parents basically inviting the entire town over to their house. And rather than say, no, April Fools, it was a joke, because they did this March 31st. So rather than saying April Fool's, it's a joke, they just continued to do it, and it just spiraled from there. But it has a lot of the Irish, like
Celt.
Yeah, Celt Fae. You appease the fairies.
Really?
Yeah, a lot of that. Spiritualists being the original NFT grifters is cracking me up.
I thought a lot of it was rooted in the weird Ozark witchcraft traditions, which were really, really bizarre. A lot of rough magic.
I wouldn't say it's not Ozark.
Really?
It's not Ozark.
Because there was a lot of witchcraft in the Ozarks, but it was really, really rough magic with stuff like poop in a hole and then curse it.
No. The, spiritualism really was more, I would say, more akin to, Irish appeasing the Fae.
Okay.
Originally, because it's coastal. It's born from New York and Massachusetts, almost entirely. At least here in the United States. And then it bounced back across the pond and took back up in England. And so a lot of the ghosts and spirits during this time period. Now, again, I know there's stuff previous to that. I'm talking strictly once the period that we call spiritualism happened. I would say that borrows more from Celt and Irish folklore. Hillbilly magic has a German flavor. Yeah, there you go.
Don't doubt that in the least.
Mhm.
Now, I've got a book actually about the witchcraft practiced in the Ozarks, and it was done as part of the National Archive Project,
Mhm.
where they just went up there and interviewed a bunch of people. And you read the stuff that they were doing, and it's like, this is retarded.
I'm gonna have to read
I mean,
that.
it's just lots of let's take bodily fluids, mix them up. Okay, well, we put a broom on the ground, and then we did this around it, or
Well, with that said, this is retarded.
we smeared mud on things, and
or this is silly. I read an editorial by a journalist who went and spent an entire summer at a modern day spiritualist retreat in Maine. I can't tell you the name of it right now. I'm sorry. If you want me to share it with you, I can look it up. But she was talking about what they did. And for the most part,
George knows what he's talking about, milking a
Yes.
rag.
But for the most part, all they do, I mean, they'll meditate, they'll commune with the spirits, and they mainly do table tapping. And again, for those who don't know what table tapping is, it's where instead of using a Ouija board, you ask your questions and then the table will rock one way or another to indicate an answer. And it is decided upon at the beginning of the seance how what's yes, what's no, so that everybody knows. And at first, I had this image of what that looked like in my head, and honestly, I was thinking it was closer to that scene in
Batwoman?
No, in Hell House,
Oh,
where the
okay.
dining table's jumping, and I've thought that it was going to be like that. And then I'm like, wait a minute, this isn't, this is contemporary. This is recent. These people might have like a website or YouTube videos, and I found them.
And it was the most embarrassing shit you'll ever see.
Yeah, it was. Actually,
I was embarrassed for these people how retarded the stuff they were doing.
Well, they're like, witness an actual table tapping session. I'm like, okay, this is gonna be good. And you just have 4 grown adults dancing around a table that one person with his hands flat on it is like rolling around on the floor. And that's the best way I can describe it. But it's very obvious this guy is doing it because all the other, people who are part of the seance, they can't keep their hands on it. In fact, 2 of them like practically flee, laughing hysterically at this rocking table. And there's only one guy, hands flat on it, rolling it. And it's just, how can you think that this is real?
Another thing I noticed about that retreat that you showed me, is there were a couple of aging hippie guys who obviously were sensitive men with a little too much weed, and a lot of lonely cat ladies into the new age shit.
Yes, exactly. And
there weren't any wizards there. You didn't see anyone who was like, okay, this person looks pretty creepy.
Well, according to the journalist who went up there, there was only like 2 men. No, I'm sorry. There were 3 men who came up there. One was the groundskeeper. and he looked like a groundskeeper, you can imagine. And then there were two other ones. One guy led the place, and the other one was one of the teachers. And everybody else who either lived up there permanently or who purchased a cabin, and there's over 50 people who go up there, were all women.
Exactly. It was an estrogen fest.
Mm-hmm. Or somebody called it a clam bake.
A clam bake,
I
exactly.
like that.
All right. So, what's the most hilarious spiritualism scam you came across?
Oh,
All right.
most hilarious?
Yeah.
Besides the mongoose.
Yeah.
Besides the mongoose. Let's see. I believe it was during the Scientific American contest. And you had a woman who came in and she says, I can talk to the spirits. And they said, okay, we'll do the sitting now. And they did it in a darkened room. You start from zero. And she did her spiel. And then they said, okay, come back next time. And come back next time on this date. And she comes back, and when she comes back, they don't let her into the building. And they're like, okay, you're going to come with us. And she goes, where are we going? And they said, we're going across the street to the park. And they took her out to a field in the park and had her sit down. And then they placed the different objects around that she supposedly was able to move. And they're like, okay, do it. And she couldn't. And she declared that they were that's the other thing, is that anytime you have a skeptic who's like, prove it, I'm going to now create scientific parameters for you to, scientific conditions for you to lack of a better term, perform under. They always say that they're bigots, that they're hateful, they're spiteful, that it's all the negativity is why they can't do it. And with this particular woman, they went through her stuff and they found no, she was using spoons to move different objects around. But it was the fact that, like, they sat her down in a field. They're like, okay, perform in daylight. And she started cussing the shit out of them. Instead of just, bowing out and saying, nope, sorry, and I can't do it. Because a lot of them, they would do that. And the person would just bow out and say, you know what, I'm not feeling it today. And then they don't come back.
Well, the thing is, I think one of the reasons things like spiritualism and mediums and all that have been able to last and thrive for so long is that there are uncanny experiences that I think just about everybody has with no answer.
No, you just can't explain.
And they're non-repeatable.
Yeah. And, there's nothing wrong with that.
I mean, I'll give you the most blunt one, because usually you can say, oh, well, you just only remember thinking that because something bad happened that day.
Yeah.
You kept worrying that something bad was going to happen that day, or you got a feeling something bad would happen that day, and it did. That's usually the explanation.
Yeah.
But there was this corner I used to drive past on a regular basis. And for whatever reason, whenever I'd pass that corner, a thought had kind of been embedded in my mind that, just like, I wonder what it would feel like to actually get shot. I mean, what does a bullet wound feel like? And whenever I would drive past this corner, that thought would pop up in my head. Lo and behold, a year later, that is exactly where I got shot. How do you explain that?
You don't.
You don't. And there's no way to test it.
No.
I mean, what does that even mean?
It could just mean that, it's a really strange coincidence. Or who knows? Is demonic possession real? Well, insanity's real.
Is demonic possession real? That is a very difficult question to answer. I am more of the mind, because at this point, I'm not going to deny anything. I am more of the mind that we're dealing with mental illness, that different forms of mental illness. Now, I have friends and I have people in the chat here who have told me they know people or have seen shit that could not be explained away by mental illness. But, for example, the entity case. Let me get the name correct before I go.
While you're pulling that up, I'm going to go get one of my books.
Oh, you are?
Yes, I am.
The Doris Berther case, which is the film the entity was based on, was terrorized by supposedly the ghost of her husband who was raping her and causing horrible things to happen. The team did record some very bizarre phenomena in her house, and they did also notice that there was just stuff that happened that is hard to explain. Drops in temperature, objects being smashed against the room, orbs, which they did manage to photograph. But here's the thing. The activity only happened when she got angry and drunk, and the woman was deeply mentally ill. So it's kind of a hard one. It was a chicken or the egg thing, So is demonic possession real? Until proven otherwise, I don't think demons are real. I think really evil people are real. Yeesh, the Gray predicted getting shot. Well, that's sure what it seemed like, didn't it? And, also after I got shot, I had this notion that I'd survive. I mean, that doesn't mean anything, though. It's non-quantifiable. I might have thought that and still died. Would I be able to prove it? Endless Nocturne. I was thinking Wednesday I shouldn't say I'm getting a haircut today because it might get it canceled. It got canceled because work sprang a mandatory training on me the same day. She might be an Esper. Okay, so Kat's pulled out the literature here. She's gonna dig deep now, I suppose.
Oh, I thought people would enjoy some words from beyond the veil. This is a book. This is The Talking Dead, a collection of messages from beyond the veil from 1850 to 1920. This includes things from Abraham Lincoln, George Washington, Edgar Allan Poe, which is hysterical. I'm going to be sharing that with you. William Shakespeare, Mark Twain, as mentioned before, Benjamin Franklin, Peter Cooper, Prince Albert.
In a can.
Well, now he's in a box.
Yeah.
And Emanuel Swedenborg. So also we get the descriptions of the journey to Mars and wonderful information furnished by Madame Ehrenberg. So yes, this medium took a trip to Mars and told us about it and all the lovely people there.
Really?
Yes. Apparently, these people were, lying to her before the invasion that H.G. Wells chronicled.
I see. Well, that's certainly unique.
Oh, yes, indeed. Again, I love this stuff. Now, here's the thing. I'm just going to say flat out, if I hadn't said it before, I'm not saying that there's not some way to, pierce the veil and, contact those from beyond. I'm just saying 99% of people who are making money off of it are lying. So I'm just saying that. And it's very interesting to see how if you know anything about magicians' tricks, you start seeing them with spiritualists or just flat out, they're one and the same. And like this, I actually first became fascinated with the concept with the book and then the movie The Prestige, because in The Prestige, both of them started their careers as spiritualists, but found that it was too risky to be, too easy was it for them to be exposed as frauds. So it was easier to do stage magic because, again, everybody already knows you're lying to them. The question is just how. So it's different. But that concept of, they go from one to the other, that's interesting. And I knew about Houdini. And then from there, it just putting the pieces together. Anyway. What about psychics? Are they real?
Personal opinion, absolutely yes. To what degree, I don't know. Unfortunately, they're hard to quantify.
Mm-hmm.
It's very hard to test. So until we have a method of testing it and repeating it, who the fuck knows? And psychic, is it the means that we believe it is, or is it some other form of sensory perception that we're not aware of?
Mm-hmm.
And I only say that because I've had my share of them. Put bluntly, I've had my share of them. And I think a lot of people have. I think a lot of people have their own weird things they can't explain.
Mm-hmm.
Knowledge they shouldn't have. So I don't know. It's just the problem with psychic phenomena is, in the scientific principle, you have to accept it as no until otherwise proven yes.
Mm-hmm.
Because all we've got is circumstantial evidence and personal experience. And I guess the only thing in its favor is that so many people have experienced it.
Yeah.
Did your home planet have spiritualist scams? Yes, we did. It was actually a huge problem. It's one of the reasons we had to alter our DNA to be immune to the tricks of the reptoids. Because let me tell you, the reptoids were full of spiritualist scams. They are the worst. They are the worst con artists ever. They will bleed you fucking dry. So we basically had to essentially alter our DNA until we were impenetrable and impossible. It was impossible to fool us. That's why we're so humorless. Read this one.
BGC, are you familiar with any of the writings and dissertations of Terence McKenna? One of his assertions is that beings and or events in the future can send echoes into the past.
It's possible. I mean, the problem with Terence McKenna is he was whacked out on massive amounts of drugs. And so it's very difficult to separate the wheat from the chaff with anything he writes. It's kind of like, Dolphin Man, Dr.
Yeah. You're going to say it and I'm going to go, oh, yeah, that guy.
That scientist, John Lilly, who they went on and on and on about being a genius. And unfortunately, the vast majority of his research was done on LSD and turned out to be crap. Remote viewing. If remote viewing turns out to actually be a real deal and our CIA is using it, it wouldn't shock me.
Mm.
The amount of money that's been poured into that. But then again, there's also the possibility they've made it look real to scare the Russians. There were so many projects in the 80s that existed only to scare Russians. Danger warnings happens to me a lot. Yeah. Tim Larry, full of shit, asshole, scumbag. Seriously.
I know, I'm laughing.
Someone who really should have been taken out into the woods and beaten with sticks and then just left to die.
I'm sorry. I just keep thinking of the Moody Blues song. So raise your glass, we'll drink a toast to the little man who sells you pills along the pier.
Yeah. Tim Larry not only encouraged children, or not, teenagers to take LSD and drop out of school, the fucker was giving money to the pro-communist terrorist group, the Weathermen. And let me tell you, the Weathermen still haunt us to this day because their founders are now behind BLM and Antifa. So fuck Tim Leary and fuck everything he stood for. Because he was funding a terrorist group that was pro-communist. What about shared dreams? Had way too many of them to talk about. Again, that's why I can't say for sure. I don't know. It's very strange. I've had my share of those. Quite a few, in fact. I think the creepiest of the dreams I had that wasn't a shared dream was dreaming that I walked into the mall and picked up the soundtrack to Johnny Mnemonic, flipped it back, and read the track listing. And then when the thing actually came out, I was right. That tripped me out. I don't know. See, that's why I have to be so damn skeptical, because until there's some sort of quantifiable hard evidence that says yes, I also know that I have gone through periods in my life in which I was not mentally well. I mean, I know that a lot of you guys think I lived in a haunted house, and I saw shit that was straight out of The Entity. Full torso apparitions coming at me, making horrible, terrible images. I thought things were moving. I saw flashing lights. I saw lots of shit in that house. But until proven otherwise, I just have to blame it on me not being well. At the time, it scared the shit out of me. But by the time I was a teenager, I was so used to it, I just figured I was insane and would ignore everything I was seeing. I remember once seeing a full torso apparition kind of like appear in front of me and stretch its arms out like it was going to tackle me and make this screaming face. And I walked right through it because, oh man, I must be fucked up. That was my reaction. I'm really fucked up. And I just had accepted I was a very damaged person. And considering how I was being treated, I was a damaged person. Now, if somebody was able to go in that house and do some sort of research that could quantifiably say, yeah, there's something not right about the house, that changes everything. I do know for a fact that electrical fields can trigger things in the brain. That will trigger fear, it will cause hair to stand up on the back of your neck, and can even trigger hallucinations. So older buildings made of iron with certain electrical systems can trigger that. But then again, it also appears that residual hauntings seem to be real.
Yeah.
Explain a residual haunting.
Residual haunting, rather than a traditional haunting, is where a moment of time seemingly replays itself over and over again. So there is no actual intelligence behind the movements of the apparition that is reported to be seen. It's basically like, just hitting the play button on a DVD or VHS and just watching it go over and over again. And that also goes to like where people would say that they saw ghosts floating in the air. Some accounts of those, they've gone back and looked at architectural records and found that there had been staircases where there's no longer a staircase, or there had been a level of a building that's no longer there. So did these people who saw these apparitions know that beforehand, when they said, I saw this person floating and what it appears to be what used to be the staircase or what used to be the third floor? We don't know, but it's very interesting.
I mean, there are also gaping holes in physics that need to be answered, which could help explain this stuff. Another one I will bring up is my long, extensive stories about seeing gray aliens. For sanity's sake, I have to trust that it's all in my head. I've come to accept them as being simply a symbol of higher intelligence and almost a Zen-like state of perfection is what they've come to symbolize for me. And they need to remain that until I have quantifiable proof otherwise, no matter how lucid the dreams are or how real the things look in my night terrors. So, yeah, I mean, and we have to operate that way because it's very easy to go down the path of I'm right. Because intelligent people want to believe they're right. And that's when intelligent people get fooled. That is the easiest way to trick an intelligent person, is when they're so convinced, oh, well, I've got a 140 IQ. I can't possibly be wrong.
Well,
And just no, I can be very wrong. Thank you very much.
right now I am currently reading Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's History of Spiritualism, volumes 1 and 2. And it is legitimately tragic reading this book because logic is staring him in the face. You know, the author, the father of Sherlock Holmes, cannot see the reality of at least, you know, some of these situations, like with the Fox sisters. He's talking about how, they've never been disproven, they've never been proven as frauds. You know, and then he accounts this one time in the 1880s where words were written in an envelope and the envelope was sealed, and the spirit that they were channeling knocked out what was in the letter. And it's like, and it was amazing. Yes, 3/4 of what they said were totally wrong, but it was amazing that they did it. It's like, oh god, dude, the reality is right there. They were wrong because they're faking it. Or he was saying how at the time it seemed like all of this mediumship was coming up among rural farmers, and despite their them being uncivilized farmers, it's amazing that the spirits would speak with them. It's like, again, you don't think that maybe these farmers figured out that if they made this stuff up, rich people like you would give them money? I mean,
Yeah. Okay, considering the Earth is revolving around the sun, if temporal echoes are being made, they're not traveling according towards any law of physics. Well, unless you take the approach of Shintoism and Kame, which is the idea that locations and objects can become imbued with Kame,
mm-hmm.
with the aspect of all things and living things, and that's where the echoes or ghosts come from, is that they've been an area itself has been imbued with that moment,
Mm-hmm.
or with those horrible feelings, or that if a dog is given too much love and attention, it does take on some sort of spirit of its own.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying this is true, it's just an idea. So, okay, do you guys want to share any of your own experiences before we call it an evening? Or are you having way too much fun?
I can read poetry.
Poetry about spirits?
Poetry written by Edgar Allan Poe post-mortem.
Is it pretty funny?
I think it's funny because it's bad. let me, I won't read the whole poem.
That's not a bad idea, and we do know that there are eddies and swirls within the Earth's electromagnetic field that will cause things to move, and we don't really understand it.
Okay, this is the poem The Lost Soul, as transcribed by Lizzie Doughton in her book Inner Life, published 1863. And this is supposedly from Edgar Allan Poe. The Lost Soul. Hark, the bell, the funeral bell, calling the soul to its goal. Oh, the haunted human heart, from its idle doom to part, yet a twofold being bearing, she and I apart are tearing, she to heaven, I to hell, going, going, hark the bell. Far in hell, toiling, toiling, fiends are rolling, whitened bones and coffins reeking, fearful darkness grimy creeping, on my soul, my vision searing, she disappearing, drawing from me. By a soul I cannot see, whom I know can never love her. Oh, that soul could I discover, I would go, steeped in woe, down to darkness, down to hell. Hark the bell, farewell, farewell.
Oh yeah, that definitely sounds like some really classic.
Doesn't it?
Oh yeah, it's just so good.
Yeah, that's amazing. She also, he through her also did a sequel to The Raven, but that's really long. I mean, it's really long. Although, if any of you want something fun to read, look up Mark Twain's Jap Heron, Herron. That is supposedly the lost book of Mark Twain. Yeah, you can tell right off the bat he didn't write it. I have it in my little book here, but it's public domain, so you can get it anywhere.
Okay, do you have any more you want to share that are amusing?
Oh, let's see. I've got Hamlet in Heaven by William Shakespeare. The Sonnets of Shakespeare's Ghost. Let's see here. Sadly, the description of Mars was really boring. It was basically just one gigantic party.
Okay.
And yeah. Is it description of the journey to Mars and wonderful information furnished by Madame Einborg? Our party of tourists, after having been carefully selected in accordance with the ability to utilize the magnetic currents that connect the planets in our solar system, and their adaptability to the electric and magnetic conditions of Mars, whither we were bound, started on a journey at, according to your time, midnight, February 23rd, period.
People fell for this shit?
Yes. That was all one sentence.
No thanks. That was awful.
So yeah, I won't continue. Yeah, I read this hoping that there was something fun on what they were thinking Mars would be like, but
it wasn't Kepler's dream, is what you're saying.
It was not Kepler's dream.
You know, Kepler wrote a dream about. Oh wait, that was the moon.
Yeah, but still.
And it was very fantastical. Johannes Kepler, the astronomer, by the way, if you were wondering. All right. Well, I think unless you've got any last-minute questions or anything like that, or stories you'd like to share, we can call it an evening. What? Oh, she's making a face.
Sorry.
She's making the constipated face.
Okay. After the ceremonies and receptions, the details of which fully set forth would fill a large volume, we set out under the escort of a select delegation of 47 in number on a tour of inspection. This is on Mars.
Okay.
A few only of the incidents of which I can imperfectly touch. Many things observed by us I am not of liberty to mention, for the all-sufficient reason that you would not understand them, and the world is not prepared to receive them.
That's convenient.
Our first visit was to the Society of Literary Celebrities.
What? What the fuck?
Located in the city of Marvelous Beauty.
That's the name of the city, Marvelous Beauty?
Oh, it's all undercase, but still.
And so the literary celebrities, are these Earth celebrities or Martian celebrities?
Says, for our present use, we will call the place the City of Learning, and the Society of the Literary. These our names are not the real ones, but serve our purpose fully and well. Indeed, much better.
This is retarded. I mean, seriously, this is frickin' retarded.
Let's see here. Yeah, you see, I mean, it's like there's interesting stuff, but it's not time period. It's somebody of the time trying to sound lofty and intelligent. That's what we're reading here. This is not of the time period. This is not how people of that time period wrote.
Well, they're not asking any questions, so I think we'll call it a night.
Okay.
And I don't know. Don't take any wooden nickels from spiritualists.
No, don't.
Just trust the alien in a human suit.
Indeed. Good night, everybody. Thank you.